think we've traded our health for convenience a lot of the times.
Rather than seeing food as a form of entertainment, start seeing it as a form of nourishment.
Hello and welcome back to the Faith, Fitness, and Chronic Illness podcast. My name is Andrea. I am your host, and today I've got Cody Cox here with me. He is a licensed psychotherapist and a clinical nutritionist, and he is the host of the Real Food Mental Health podcast. He specializes in helping individuals overcome mental health challenges such as depression, anxiety, ADHD, and PTSD, while also addressing physical health through holistic and functional nutrition. He is super passionate about the body's innate ability to heal, and Cody embraces the principles that food is medicine. His current focus includes metabolic health and ketogenic therapies, which is inspired by the cutting-edge research and leaders in the field. I will warn you guys, we do talk about some controversial topics today with hormones and just some other things that are going on in the health space and world around us in today's culture that may affect our health. So please be aware of that. But as always, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So please speak with a medical provider if you want to implement anything mentioned. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to the Faith, Fitness, and Chronic Illness podcast. My name's Andrea. I'm your host, and I have Cody Cox with me here today. Thank you so much for joining me today, Cody.
Thanks for having me, Andrea. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, so we actually did a podcast not too long ago on his channel. Can you remind the audience of what that channel is?
Yeah, Real Food Mental Health.
Yeah, so Cody is a nutritional psychotherapist. So he kind of specializes in like the mind, body, and gut-brain axis. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today and how our diet and even sometimes our lifestyle can affect our mental health and how important it is to keep our gut healthy. So the first question I just want to ask you so the audience can understand how these things are connected. Can you explain what the gut-brain axis is?
Yeah, so I think it's a concept that's gaining popularity in recent years. I've kind of known about it for a while just because of what I do, and I've been following like functional health podcasts for quite a while too. But essentially the gut-brain axis it's that nervous connection between the gut and the brain, and there actually is a direct connection through the vagus nerve. People don't realize that what we eat directly affects our mental health because of that connection through the vagus nerve. So the gut actually produces 95% of the body's neurotransmitters, which tells us that if our gut is out of whack, our brain is going to be out of whack too. And so that's really my main focus in my clinical practice, is to help people learn how to heal the gut by eating the right foods to improve that neurotransmitter production, which then translates to better brain function.
That's awesome. So I wanted to mention this to you earlier too. Do you know what the oats test is? There is a test it's an organic acids test, and it's a urine test, and it can actually show you what neurotransmitters are functioning properly and which ones aren't. I'm wondering if that's something you might want to look into to show your patients an actual, kind of like a tangible, like, hey, this is actually a problem. This is probably why you're experiencing these issues. Mosaic Labs offers them, and it even tells you which pathways. So like, okay, you're low in your B vitamins. You should look into that. I think that might be an added benefit to what you got going on. Do you have certain protocols that you give your patients depending on what you see clinically?
Yes. So I can speak a lot to this. So lately I've been getting more into like the low carb, ketogenic therapies. Like you introduced me as a nutritional psychotherapist, which is what I call myself, but I'm actually kind of toying with the idea of calling myself a metabolic psychotherapist, because I'm starting to use ketogenic diets more and more in treatment. As we reduce the carbohydrates, not only are we improving gut function, but we're also helping to balance blood sugar. And that's another major part of mental health. And so I've found a lot of success. I mean, I'm just kind of new at this, I'm not going to lie, in the last several months, but I have found a lot of success with the patients that I have seen in getting them to go on a ketogenic diet, particularly. Typically, I'll have them measure their ketones if they're willing and able to do so. So I like to use the Keto Mojo, which is a device that measures both blood glucose and ketones. And it's not in real time like you would get with a continuous glucose monitor, but I do like that added measurement of the ketones. And so that can really motivate people to keep going. Unfortunately, I do see a lot of university students and they have a very limited budget. So for the most part, with people who just simply don't have the resources to eat the way that they really should be eating, I'm really just kind of gently encouraging more of the simple swaps, like eat whole wheat bread instead of white bread. And if you're already eating whole wheat bread, maybe consider making some homemade sourdough or something like that. So just making these really simple swaps with what people are already eating, so they're not having to drastically change their routine. And that makes it a little bit more doable. Now, is that therapeutic? Is it really beneficial for their mental health? I think in some ways it really is. Because if most people are eating the standard American diet, which is replete with ultra-processed foods, lots of carbohydrates, particularly refined carbohydrates, and you're making these simple swaps to get away from those ultra-processed things, you're going to feel better anyway, even if it's not technically a low-carb diet or even an organic diet. And yes, I do recommend an organic diet if you are able to do that. But not everybody is, unfortunately. I've even lived in places, like I lived in rural Nevada several years ago. We were 2 hours from the nearest grocery store, and that grocery store was Walmart. So it wasn't exactly a health food store. So in places like that, I know there are a lot of places in the United States and other countries that are like that, where it's like you just can't access that high quality food. And so you just get what you can get and do the best that you have.
Right. Yeah, I've noticed that, sometimes I need to have some compassion because I am very stringent and strict and like with what I do, because I think it's an investment. I think it's important that we get good quality food, but I do understand some people just don't have that means. And those suggestions that you had, I think, are similar to what I would probably advise people is, step away from the ultra processed and just try your best to get the whole food that can be sometimes even cheaper. I mean, I think about you can get probably like a pound of potatoes for $5, $6, and you can get a bag of potato chips for $3 or $4. So you're actually getting more food for less money. And I try to educate people in that way of like you can buy this bag of potato chips for convenience, or you can buy a bag of potatoes, which is going to take up more time for you to actually cook and eat these things, but it's worth it, right? I think we've traded our health for convenience a lot of the times, and it's probably hard though with university students and people in college, because they probably only have like a microwave in their dorm, and that
And
kind
what
of
I've
makes
found
things
too
hard.
is in my area, a lot of people live in student housing. And so it's not necessarily dorms, but just apartments that are near campus. So they do have full kitchens. They have ovens, they have stoves, they have microwaves, but the microwave is typically all they're using. If they use their oven, they're baking cookies or some other treat that isn't necessarily like a healthy meal, right?
Right.
And even I did that. I'm not going to lie. I had this desire to reduce my sugar intake. And so I at least made an effort to do that, but I was still eating a lot of ultra processed foods. After a while, I learned that using a microwave isn't necessarily a healthy thing. So I stopped doing that and I started going more toward the oven to reheat foods. But it was still not really cooking. Like I was mostly just kind of reheating, like heating up the frozen stuff that you would buy pre-made.
Yes. Yeah, so that it's interesting. So I try to have some type of balance because sometimes I don't want to cook. And so there are some options that kind of like the swaps that you were talking about. I give patients, I'm like, this is at least a better option for you. Like the Kevin's Paleo prepackaged foods that have like, they've got like beef stroganoff and like things like that, but it's like keto or paleo, and it's like sweetened with honey, because it's really hard to re-educate people on it's okay to just have like a meat and a vegetable for dinner. Like you don't have to have these sauces. And actually, do you have any, I guess, theories or recommendations on like actually getting people to get over like the palate issues? Because people get really bored like with just eating real food because they're so used to the processed food.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is psychological. There's definitely a biological component there too, because as you know, as we have, like, if it's a bacterial overgrowth or a yeast overgrowth, that actually sends signals to our brains and makes us crave more ultra processed foods. And so there's definitely a biological piece there. But the psychological side to me is more of a cultural thing. Like we have this expectation that food should entertain. And so what I tell people, at least in my office, is rather than seeing food as a form of entertainment, start seeing it as a form of nourishment. It's not just fuel, because if you say fuel, then you're implying that it's just calories. And we don't want just calories. We want nutrients. We want to nourish the mind and the body.
So, what is the most nutrient dense food for the listeners?
I have heard that something like a pasture-raised beef liver is one of the most nutrient-dense foods. And I mean, honestly, that's not a particularly palatable food for a lot of people. And that's why it's not super common. If you go to a restaurant or even at a grocery store, it can be hard to find. But there are ways that you can get that in your diet anyway. So like, for example, if you get a liver and you just put it in the freezer, you can just grate it on a cheese grater and mix it in with ground beef. And that way you're getting some nutrients without having to just eat the liver straight, or you could eat the liver straight. It kind of just depends on how brave you are. But that is one of the most nutrient-dense foods. And I'm not sure I really believe that it is the most nutrient-dense food. I think we need a variety of foods. But if I were to choose one, I probably would choose that liver from a properly raised cow.
It's so, yeah, that's interesting you say that. So when I was very sick and desperate and was doing very strict carnivore, I don't know if you have Publix where you are. It's just like I'm not going to compare it to Walmart. Anyways, it's a grocery store and they have like a kosher section. And in the kosher section, they have grass-fed beef liver and it's super cheap. I mean, it's maybe you get like maybe a half a pound of liver and it's like $4 or $5. And you want to be careful with over consuming liver because it is high in vitamin A, and
Yeah.
it's not a water soluble vitamin, so you can get toxicity from it. But
So like 2 to 3 times a week is what I've heard is optimal.
Yeah, so I would cut it in half or even like in slivers, and then I would eat maybe 2 ounces a day. And I tell you what, I actually loved it. I loved it. And I don't know if it's because I have previously taken liver supplements for like a decade before and I just was used to the taste. I was like, oh, this is actually really good. Or I've heard too, and I don't know if this is true, with like the intuitive eating people of like, well, if you don't like it, then you don't need it. Which I don't know how I feel about that. But
Yeah, there are pros and cons to intuitive eating. I worked at the university a couple years ago, the university that we have here. And I was a therapist on campus. And coincidentally, there's a huge nutrition program at this university. And they really push that intuitive eating ideal to like all undergraduate and graduate students.
oh man.
And I couldn't help but to just kind of fight against that. And so as I would meet with my clients in therapy, I would just say, like, intuitive eating, it has its pros, but you have to recognize the cons too. So essentially what the message with that is, you can eat whatever you want. Food is just food. And I'm like, if that's true, then what's the point in hiring a dietitian? Like, these are dietitians that are saying this. And so they're kind of putting themselves out of business by saying that. But what I do like about it is the self-awareness, listening to the body. Like, what does your body want or not want? Mm-hmm. And follow that, because most of the time, if you think you need sugar or you think your body wants sugar, that's not actually what it wants. It's just that you have low blood sugar and you need to eat.
Yeah. Yeah, and we too have to look at our emotions. I realize that when I'm stressed, I tend to overeat no matter what food it is. And I would binge on steak. I mean, it really didn't matter what it was until I kind of got to the root of that problem. Now I tend to go the other way and I don't eat enough. But it's interesting what you said. This is actually a good point to bring up. This is the difference between dietitians and practitioners like us who have been through like the Nutritional Therapy Association or some other holistic nutrition training is we're not indoctrined by the medical system. And so as a registered dietitian, they are very, cholesterol is bad for you and everything in moderation. Oh, you're dehydrated, drink a Gatorade, food dyes are
Avoid
okay.
saturated fat.
Yeah, make sure to get your seed oil. So it's like the opposite of everything. Because it's so interesting. I've recently been working with a lot of diabetics, and they have previously worked with dietitians, and they're like, yeah, you can have rice and sweet potatoes and all these things, which, I mean, yes, but like, I'm not saying these foods are bad, but when I look at diabetics, I look at them as like, you're in debt right now and you can't afford to have carbohydrates because you don't have enough insulin pumping in your blood to push it into your cells. So we need to get out of debt first. And the only way to do that is to really limit our carbohydrate intake and up our protein, build our muscles, fix our metabolism so that our body can utilize that and become more insulin sensitive. And it's just crazy because within 3 weeks, it's like their blood sugar's dropping too low now because they're on meds, and they get off their meds and it's like they're fine. It's like, just stop eating the carbohydrates. And it's not like a forever thing. Once their metabolism heals and their body heals, then you can gradually start introducing those things. Do you have any diabetics that you work with? I know you had mentioned blood sugar regulation.
I have before. I don't think I currently do. In fact, I don't think I've seen any diabetics since before our training. And so interestingly, I actually did get other holistic nutrition training before we went through the nutritional therapy practitioner program. But the reason I decided to get more training was because I found that the training that I had before was really good information. It was very much in line with what we learned with the Nutritional Therapy Association, but they didn't really teach me how to work with people. It was more about the information. Here, memorize this, and this is what people should be doing. But it wasn't really about this is how you help them do these things. And I found that I was really overwhelming people. And so as I look back with the people who were diabetic, if I knew they were diabetic, I probably mostly just told them, eat whole foods, make sure it's grass-fed, pasture-raised, organic whenever possible, and make sure you stay hydrated. I didn't really have a very good understanding of blood sugar regulation. To me, it was more about the nutrient-dense diet stuff. But it was so much information to the point that most people just didn't listen to what I said.
Right. So with people, when you're addressing blood sugar dysregulation with mental health, what do you tell people to do first? Like, do you have a food log? Do you look at their food? Kind of give me some tips of what you have people do to help eliminate blood sugar dysregulation.
Yeah, well, I mean, like most nutritional therapy practitioners will do the food and mood journal, and I think that's especially helpful for what I do between nutrition and psychotherapy, because it does include the mood part. And that's exactly what I want people to notice. Like, what are you eating and how is that making you feel emotionally? So I'll do that. So typically, for the sake of your listeners who might not know, a food and mood journal usually is just writing down everything you eat for 3 days, maybe 4 days. It kind of depends on the practitioner, but 3 or 4 days, you're writing that down. You're noticing how your body feels after you ate what you ate. And then your practitioner will look at that and they'll help you make adjustments. So like, for example, if you are getting gas after eating a high carbohydrate meal, that's a sign that your body's struggling with processing carbohydrates. And so that might be the time to reduce the carbohydrates or change the carbohydrates or kind of rebalance those macronutrients. So maybe you need some more fat and protein, kind of balance things out. But it really just depends on the person. I would like to just get everybody on a ketogenic diet. Hopefully it's a whole food ketogenic diet. But even just plain keto, like we call that dirty keto, if they're going out and they're buying all the keto friendly ultra processed foods. So they're still in ketosis and they're still benefiting. I've heard of so many cases where Like, I even have a family member right now who works for a company that makes keto-friendly foods. And she's been on keto for, I don't know, several years, and she's doing so much better. Like, her mental health, her physical health has improved significantly despite the fact that this is ultra-processed foods that she's selling and eating. And so I do believe that it's beneficial, but whole foods is definitely better. You're getting more nutrient density. You are probably going to heal a lot faster that way. And so my preference would be to get everybody on a ketogenic diet, because that's just the simplest protocol. I mean, there are ways that you could do that as far as balancing blood sugar and still eating carbs. You would be going more for the whole food carbs. You would be balancing your macros. Like I said, maybe it's more fat, more protein, more fiber helps with that too, which technically is a carb, but it actually helps to balance the blood sugar. And so there are different ways to do it, even if you're not on keto, but that would be my first approach if the person's willing and ready to do that.
Now, do you just push them straight in, or do you have them like slowly transition into a keto diet?
I'll have them slowly transition because I really don't want people to deal with what we call the keto flu, where typically it's just a lack of electrolytes, but you essentially end up with flu symptoms for several days or a week, or what, it kind of depends on the person. But something like that can really unmotivate somebody and make them want to give up. They're like, I'm feeling worse. This isn't working. And so that makes them want to do something else. And so I'd really like to avoid that as much as I can. So the transition period, again, I mean, it's bio-individual for everybody. It depends on a person's readiness. I recently had a client in Nevada who she specifically sought me out for help with getting on a ketogenic diet for mental health. And so she was totally willing to do that, except she signed up in December. And culturally speaking, I mean, we tend to eat a lot of Christmas junk food in December. And so I was like, we're just going to start with paleo. So it's going to be more whole foods. We are cutting out the grains, and we're just going to get used to eating whole foods at least for the month of December. And then as soon as New Year's came around, we jumped more into the ketogenic, the low carb. I think I started her with 50 grams of carbs per day, and then we lowered it as she got more used to that. And really the key thing with avoiding the keto flu is making sure you're well hydrated and you're getting those minerals.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do in December and January. I mean, I'm not going to lie, when it's cold and snowy outside, I don't want to drink water. And so yeah, but that is one of the key things. You want to make sure you're getting those electrolytes and you're drinking plenty of water.
Yeah. I tell people you can get dehydrated in the winter too, even if you're not sweating. More people actually get dehydrated in the winter because they don't hydrate because they don't think that they need to. I think with what I had dealt with my chronic illness, I had gotten diagnosed with POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And one of the key things that your cardiologist will tell you to do is to drink a lot of water and eat a lot of salt. So I have, for the past 5 years, never missed a beat. I'm always hydrated. I always have my water with me. It's something that's it's almost like my safety blanket a little bit. I never go anywhere without water. And it's crazy because I used to be completely opposite. I would drink coffee all day. I would never take a sip of water until I was like extremely thirsty, and then I'd guzzle down a bunch of water. And I can't believe I used to live like that. It's just crazy.
For me, when I was in high school, I used to drink a lot of soda and milk, particularly. And so I think I was fine as far as getting liquids because it was usually caffeine-free soda. So it was still a lot of sugar and not ideal, but I was getting liquids and it was okay. But then as I got older, I got more into smoothies and I got more into more of a dairy-free lifestyle because I somehow thought that was healthier. And I think it is if you have a dairy sensitivity or a lactose intolerance, but I was just kind of following the fads. I was pretty naive. I wanted to be healthy. It was a genuine effort that I was trying to make. I was trying to cut out the sugar, trying to cut out dairy. I would go for the soy milk instead, which now I look back and I'm like, that was a mistake. Eventually I went to the almond milk, but nothing really replaces pure water.
No. And good, purified, pure water.
Yeah, and I listened to the Wise Traditions podcast. It's the podcast that's put out by the Weston A. Price Foundation.
Yeah,
Their
yeah.
episode this week is about water, and I've been really interested in this guest. I'm going to probably look her up and try to get some more information about her. But this episode is fascinating because she talks about structured water. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, like
And
hydrogen and structured water.
so structured water basically is water in its most natural form, its unrefined form. And so this is kind of a new concept to me, the idea of ultra processed water. And so this lady, I can't remember her name, but she actually discourages drinking water that is ultra filtered, like reverse osmosis,
Hmm.
because it is unstructured.
Mm.
And your body, your body still benefits from it, but not nearly as much as if it were structured. And so theoretically, if you were to drink nothing but structured water, so that might be water directly from a natural spring or water that you structure yourself, there are various devices to do this. But if you were to drink structured water, you would need less water to hydrate yourself more compared to drinking like reverse osmosis or distilled water. You could drink a ton of it and still not be hydrated.
Yes, there is. I don't know if you know who Sarah Kleiner is. She is pretty into all the circadian rhythm and then water specifically, and something called deuterium, which is a bacteria, I believe, found in our gut, and how when you drink too much water, it can deplete you of deuterium and it can cause all sorts of issues. I will tell you, I have tried hydrogen water and I definitely do not need to drink as much when I put my little tablets in there. And with the structured water, it's interesting because I'm like, can I just stir it and make it structured? I don't know how it. I need to look into it more, but because they have like those, like you said, those devices. But I always think, okay, if you go out in nature. And before we had grocery stores and bottled water, that's exactly the water we would be getting is free flowing. It's moving. It's not stagnant.
Yeah.
And now we just drink this stagnant water and it's typically doesn't have minerals. And so
And
yeah, we're not getting cellular hydration.
quite tragically, if you live in a bigger city, most likely your tap water is recirculated. So it's like even worse. And I actually don't know if my tap water is recirculated where I live. I live in a fairly small city. It's a college town, about
Yeah.
100,000 people. It's possible that it could still come from mountain springs. I don't know. I should probably look into that. But yeah, there are various devices. I know the Mayu is a really popular one, Mayu. And I've wondered, I kind of look at that technology and really all it does is it just swirls the water in like this container and then you pour it in your glass and drink it. They make these laboratory devices that are like magnetic stirrers.
Yeah, they make like the wands. I saw
Yeah,
that.
and there are wands too, but I've wondered if you can just buy one of those magnetic stirrers on Amazon for like $30, if that would make structured water. I don't know. Or if maybe there's something else to that Mayu that I can't tell, but it looks to me like all they're doing is stirring it for like 5 minutes and then you drink it.
Yeah, that's fun. Like yeah. I try to be I like the science behind stuff, but I also try and be like, if I could do this a cheaper way and free, then I'm gonna do it. Just like I've recently discovered Pilates, and I actually bashed it for a while, but I watched a YouTube video and did an at-home workout, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, it's
I'm like,
intense.
yeah, I can go to the gym and lift 200 pounds, but man, I can't. I can barely do a 20-minute Pilates workout.
You know, it's kind of funny how like we have so many practices in the United States that are traditionally male practices. So Pilates was actually a man who was a prisoner in a concentration camp during World War II. Joseph Pilates. And so he's the one that came up with Pilates. And so originally it was a men's practice. And yoga, same thing. Traditionally it's a men's practice. So if you go to India and you see people practicing yoga, it's mostly going to be men. But for some reason in the United States, we think of it as being more feminine.
That's interesting. Polarity health is interesting too. I've been diving into that topic. I have a friend, he wrote a book. Shout out to Asa. He wrote a book called How. I'm going to butcher it. Do I have it behind me? No, I'm reading it, so it's in my room. I'll put it in the description below, but it's How Polarity Will Save the World or something along those lines. It's a great book and talks about how we have like flipped roles and how a lot of women today are in their masculine, and it's kind of making men more feminine, and vice versa. Like a lot of men have became more feminine. It's pushing women to be more masculine, and how it's kind of just like blowing up the nuclear family. And yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, that actually ties really well into mental health because I've noticed that. And hopefully this isn't too controversial for your listeners, but the way I see like the LGBT movement is it's more of a hormonal imbalance. Because I have heard cases in which people have followed a more traditional diet. So like those ancestral whole foods, it might be pasture-raised beef, wild caught fish, pretty much a high fat, low carb diet that's properly prepared. And even if they thought they were gay before, they find that following that diet eventually leads them to being convinced that they're actually heterosexual. And it was all just kind of a social thing that we were, I don't know, like brainwashed into in some ways.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the way
Yeah.
I see it. And I know that's not really ideal for a therapist to say that. We're supposed to be all inclusive and celebrating diversity and stuff, but I just can't help from my nutritional background. That's just the way I see it. When your hormones are disrupted, you are going to be gender confused.
Yeah. And so Asa talks about that in his book. And even like the different pathogens and microbes like parasites or Lyme disease or these other like hidden infections that people can get, like candida overgrowth, because it produces, estrogen. And if there's a guy who has candida overgrowth and he has got more estrogen in his system, yeah, he's going to start to become more feminine or get the types of like what is it called when the guys get the chest? Anyways, they develop these feminine traits.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think it's super interesting. And obviously, I'm a Christian, so part of me also sees it as its sin. And it's not that I don't like these people. It's just that with my brain, I always want to fix a problem, and I will ask the question why. Because when you understand truth and you have that solid foundation of like, this is how we were created, this is how we're designed. And if something's kind of out of the ordinary, I'm like, well, why? Right? Why do you have autoimmune disease? Because our body's not designed to attack itself. So there must be something in your tissue, like Hashimoto's, for example. There must be some heavy metals or Lyme disease or something that's making your body attack itself because it's trying to constantly kill whatever pathogen is in there. And then same with just hormone balance and mental health. And there's a lot of, trauma can do those things. And yeah, I'm all about controversial. So
Good.
I like to talk about these kinds of topics in a sense of biology and health and what's the best for our society and culture. And you see these people who do struggle with gender identity, they don't have the best mental health. They are depressed, they are anxious, they do feel lost, and so they cling on to the identity of what they think and they feel. And that's another thing is feelings, which kind of ties back into the intuitive eating of, well, I feel this way and I need my feelings validated, but feelings aren't always truth. And that can tie back into the gut health because these microbes in our gut can make us feel like we want sugar. And so we crave something. And so we're relying on these feelings and these emotions to do things. And it's just, it's a mess.
It really is a mess. I tend to be pretty controversial. Like, I'm very sensitive and don't really want to make people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But as we get down, it very much is a rabbit hole. As we get down this rabbit hole of holistic health, we start to open our eyes to like all the things that are going on. And it's like, I can't believe how naive I was. Like I gave the example earlier about how I was drinking soy milk because I had this idea that avoiding dairy was healthier. And now I'm totally opposite. It's like, no, avoid soy and go ahead and eat your dairy if you don't have a sensitivity to it. And I feel so much better when I am eating more traditional foods as opposed to like this ultra processed soy milk or almond milk or cashew milk or whatever it is, these fake milks. But I get it. Sometimes you need to have that alternative. Like I said, if you have a lactose intolerance or some other issue where your body just can't handle it, you have to go to these alternatives. Hopefully you can get to the point where you don't need to buy the alternatives either, though. And like, you can just be okay eating the whole foods. And so you don't have to have your cereal, for example, because that's just another ultra processed food. But it's just amazing how, I was going to mention Generation Z particularly, they're very much into, so you are,
I'm at the cutoff.
okay, that's
Like
kind of what,
I'm the oldest part of Gen Z.
okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of vague definitions here because, like, I'm technically at the older part of the millennials,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there are some millennials older than me, but you don't really know what the cutoff is. Generation Z, especially, those are most of my clients right now because I'm in a university town, and those are the ones who are in college. Those are the ones that I'm seeing, and they're very much, generationally, culturally speaking, they're very much into this, like, LGBT affirming, or like whatever that their pathology is. They refuse to admit that it's a pathology, and they just think it's part of their identity. So they want to be celebrated, they want to be supported, but they don't realize, I think they're going to be pretty disappointed as they get older and they start to realize that maybe some of this actually is pathology, especially as we get more into, I think functional medicine is becoming more of a thing. It's still not mainstream. But as we gain a better understanding of that and how our hormones can be out of balance simply from having dysregulated blood sugar, but it could be environmental things like exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, like in our shampoos and in our cleaners, and
Yes.
so many factors affect our hormones. But as we gain a better understanding of that, people are going to be like, I can't believe I made that mistake in my 20s. And I thought that was my identity. People are just jumping into these decisions that they can't undo. And I'm really fearful of what's going to happen in the next few decades for that reason.
Yeah, my heart just breaks for those, because I do see a lot of the detransitioners coming out, and it's hard. It's really hard, and I wish we had not so much affirming care, but other options, instead of like, oh, you feel this way? Okay, let's do it. Instead of, hey, actually, why don't we take a step back? Why don't we look at your diet? Why don't we look at what you're putting on your body? Why don't we get rid of these chemicals, and maybe why don't we get outside in the sun? Why don't we do these things first? Give it a trial period, and if you still feel this way, you have autonomy. You can do what you want with your body. It does break my heart. And again, from a practitioner standpoint, I like to dig deep into those and just ask why, instead of just going with the wind with those certain things.
I actually want to share a personal experience with that. So this was before being gay was really trendy, but there was one point when I was in my 20s that I was questioning. And now looking back, it's really interesting to look back from a nutritionist standpoint. I was following a vegetarian diet, and it was a really unhealthy vegetarian diet because, again, it was that perception that eating animal products was unhealthy, therefore being vegetarian must be healthier. So that's kind of what I was doing in my earnest effort to just be healthier. But because I was a poor college student, the problem was I ended up eating a lot of cereal and a lot of bread. And I did get some like fat and protein, mostly from dairy, sometimes from eggs, but I didn't eat meat at all. And I hardly ever ate a fruit or a vegetable. Most of the time it was a fruit, like a banana, because bananas are delicious. And most certainly, I never got tested, but I am pretty certain that my hormones were way out of whack. And I was questioning, and I never got into any relationships or anything with this, but I was questioning whether I was gay.
Yeah.
And it was like a couple years later, maybe even just a year later, I started to get away from the vegetarian mindset, started eating meat again. And I thought for a while, it was just a choice that I had made because you mentioned that you're Christian. I'm Christian too. And so for me, it was more like religious values. I'm like, this doesn't make sense with my religion. I'm just going to choose not to be gay. And I thought it was all about my choice. But I think part of that was my nutrition too, because I did start eating meat again. And now I have no question. It's just, I'm purely heterosexual. I'm not confused about it. And I think eating meat was a big, big part of that. it helped to balance my hormones, and I might still have some imbalance. I don't know, but I feel like I'm a lot better than I was, and a lot of it had to do with my health, not necessarily about this natural inclination to be attracted to somebody of the same sex.
Yeah, from I guess more of a moral and religious view too on this is we're more than just what we're attracted to. Like that should not be our identity. Like our sexual preference, that shouldn't be our identity. We are more than sexual beings. That's part of us and it's an important part of us, but we shouldn't be worshiping that part of us.
Yeah.
And that is really, thank you for sharing. That is super interesting because I think there are a lot of guys who struggle with that. And I've met a couple too, even in like the Christian realm of they're like, I struggle with this. And I'm like, get your hormones checked. Like do some type of detox where you're getting rid of these estrogens and these plastics and all of these things that can be disrupting your hormones. Because if you're not wanting to be this way and you're struggling, like keep searching. And it's just crazy how just changing your diet and eating meat. And it's crazy too because if I eat meat, that doesn't mean I'm going to be more masculine, right?
Yeah.
It's going to balance my hormones to be more of my biology of being a woman. And that's what I found too. I was like a pescatarian-ish. I tried to stay away from meat too for a while. And I was like the tomboy of like the dudes. I had short hair. I was like a bro. And my hormones were all messed up. I had like elevated testosterone and it was just a mess. And even my estrogen was a mess. And so once I was able to balance those and I just kind of, I don't know, something just switched and my brain fog kind of went away. And I just was like, huh, okay. But there are some cultural things too. Like I didn't grow up with a dad and my mom was pretty absent. And so I kind of grew up already in this like very stressful environment where I did have to take on more masculine traits because I wasn't being provided for.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that go into this, but I think diet should absolutely be addressed first and foremost.
I interviewed somebody the other day for a job, actually, and he brought up the concept of the trad wife. What do you think of the trad wife movement?
I am for it. I'm very reformed in my theology, and as much as I love trying to grow my own business and be a boss babe, I am like, if there's a man out there that wants to make me a stay-at-home mom, like I'm all for it. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to work. It just means that he is going to lead and pretty much be the sole provider, and I'm going to take his leadership and be submissive, which is what the Bible talks about. And I'm a very, very strong Christian. So Ephesians chapter 5 talks about all the marriage dynamics of what a Christian marriage should look like and how that should operate. And but even Proverbs 31 talks about what a woman should be doing, and it still says that she works and she brings in profit and she does these things. But yeah, I'm a huge proponent. I've been working too a little bit with I'm in that Polarity health group and just kind of learning like what does it mean to be feminine? Because if a guy asks me, oh, let me help you with this, I'm like, no, I got it. And it's like, no, like you're a woman, accept the help. Like, so I'm like, I'm learning too. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is what it's actually like to be in my feminine and not in my masculine. Because as a man, if I were to come up and ask, can I help you? You should probably be like, no, I have this. Not to say that I shouldn't help, but women were, biblically speaking, we were created as a helper to a man. So a man should pretty much have everything set forth. He should have a plan. He should have leadership skills and provision and goals, and he should be ambitious, and women should be more vulnerable and willing to submit and more quiet. And it's that polarity, right? It's the complete opposites of each other. But that's what makes it work so well, is because the woman is giving traits to the man that he doesn't have. And yeah, I'm still learning all about that stuff, and it's really interesting. And I think diet has a lot to do with it. And Asa talks about it in his book, and he went raw carnivore, and it talked about fasting too, how fasting has improved his testosterone, and it's there's just so many avenues that we can go down with all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I think the concept of feminism has been greatly misinterpreted when we look at history.
Yeah.
Like, I can kind of see where people are coming from when they identify as being a feminist and saying, well, women deserve rights. And I don't disagree with that.
Right.
I think women should be able to own businesses and own land and vote and all that, all the stuff that we do. But some people have this idea that men have always been essentially antagonists to women. And I don't think that's necessarily true. Like, sure, in some cases, yeah, that probably is true, but I wouldn't say that's true for all men. And I am so much more aware of that now that I'm married and I have children.
Mm-hmm.
And how difficult it is. Like, my wife and I both own businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so difficult for us to decide who's going to cook dinner because we're both busy doing stuff. And it's like, I can see why our ancestors did what they did, because it actually made a lot more sense for one person to be home and for that person to be the designated meal preparer.
Yeah.
And the designated child raiser, and for the other parent to be out making the money so that they could buy groceries and pay for the house.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. It wasn't about any sort of domination or
Right.
abuse or anything like that. I think it culturally made a lot of sense, and people are starting to realize that, and they're starting to go back to that. Unfortunately, we have hyperinflation and we are in a housing crisis.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
people are gaining that ideal of going back to the ancestral ways, but financially speaking, it's a lot more difficult to do that. And so people are going more to homesteading as much as they can while still having two full-time incomes to pay the mortgage. It's such a mess. I wish we could just reduce the cost of living for everyone and make it more possible to be wholesome.
Yeah, well, I think that's not to go too deep down the rabbit hole, but it's going exactly as planned. They wanna tear apart the nuclear family because that's where it all starts.
Oh, I've forgotten about Black Lives Matter. I don't know if you heard this, but on their website, they actually said that their mission was to tear down the nuclear family. I was like, what does that have to do with black people? But that's actually what they said on the website, and they may have taken it down since, but it was maybe 5 years ago I found it on their website. And it's like,
That's
okay,
crazy.
I don't support that organization.
Right.
Not that I have anything against black
anything
people, but it's more about tearing down the nuclear family that I'm against.
Well, we're going down a huge rabbit hole over here.
We are. I mean, you kind of welcomed it when you're like, I'm all about the controversial.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Planned Parenthood was started by a eugenicist, which means somebody who wants to depopulate a certain race or disability. I studied sign language for a while and learning just about the deaf history and how they would experiment on deaf people and make them infertile and sterile so they couldn't have babies, because being deaf is like a gene trait, and so if your parent's deaf, you're more likely to have like a deaf child. And even with like the dwarfism and all these things. And we see that most of the people who take part in the Planned Parenthood services that they offer are predominantly like lower class minorities. And that's exactly the audience that they target.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to talk too much more about that, but
well, you see that in the food system too. I mean, think about who's eating all the ultra processed food. I mean, yeah, sometimes rich people, but it's usually the poor people.
Yep.
Because they're the ones working multiple jobs to pay their rent or their mortgage, and they don't have the time to cook. And so they're going after that convenience that you mentioned earlier. They're trading their health for their convenience. And for them, it's kind of out of necessity, but I kind of wish we could somehow, like, I know ultra processed foods are subsidized in the United States. That makes ultra processed foods a lot cheaper. Yeah. I wish we could reverse that to where healthy food is subsidized. And I think the reason they don't is just because healthy food is not shelf stable. There might be some corporate bias there too, but if we could somehow flip-flop that and get poor people to eat healthier food, poor people would be healthier and not just the rich people having all of that health privilege that they have.
Yeah. Oh, this is bringing up so many topics I want to talk about.
I know
Yeah,
we're gonna have to
so
record another one, I guess.
I know. Yeah, so we're getting kind of short on time. So let's wrap it up. But as far as the gut brain connection, what is one thing that somebody can start doing today with their diet to help with their mental health?
I would say the first thing, I was actually asked this recently by somebody else. The first thing that you can do if you're not doing anything else to improve your diet is just get your fats right, which might be like cutting out those seed oils that you might be eating in those ultra processed foods, or just eating more of the right fats that you're already eating. So like butter is a big one. Butter can be expensive, but I think it's more affordable than a lot of the other healthy fats. Like right now where I live, avocados are like $2 per avocado. And it's like, okay, avocados are a healthy fat, but I'm only going to buy them when they're more affordable. So I tend to go for the butter. I buy it when it's on sale. I put it in the freezer. So that way, when I run out, I just pull another one out of the freezer. So you don't have to keep buying it at such a high price. You just buy it when it's cheap. That would be the number one thing. There's, of course, more, but that's really important for mental health. Your brain is mostly made of fat, so it makes sense that we need to eat more healthy fat to fuel the brain.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Cody. We will definitely have to schedule another one and talk more controversial topics.
I have a lot to say about those things, so yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll talk soon.
Okay, sounds good.